Distinguished participants, hi. Today, one of the original parts of MARUF, this series, Dialogue Marmara. It is about the regional issues and, of course, with the scientists and the mayors and the related actors we are going to discuss, and we will put it for the attention of the public. In our first meeting, we will look at the regional approach. We will look at the Marmara Region Spatial Development Strategic Framework document. And, of course, this is a regional process. And this is about this Spatial Development Strategic Framework document. When we decided this, we got opinions from the prominent scientists, and we are aware that they are already working in this regard, and we became aware of this. And from Istanbul Technical University, we established communication with the academicians, and they contributed to us. And today, we will discuss Marmara Region Spatial or Zone Development Strategic Framework document, and there will be three scientists: Mehmet Ocakçı, Professor Dr. Gülden Erkut, and Professor Dr. Fatih Terzi. And in terms of these regional approaches, of course, I'd like to thank everyone who contributed to this. They're gathering the different sectors together for Marmara region. I'd like to thank the scientists and academicians who contributed, especially in the pandemic time. So we have Mehmet Bey, Fatih Bey, and Gülden Hanım, and they're going to give us some general information within an hour. Of course, it is a limited time, but in terms of general framework, we are going to listen to our speakers. If we have time, we will receive the questions. That will be the first announcement to the public, and that will be a meeting which will provide the basis for the next meeting. So once again, I'd like to extend my thanks to the academicians, and I'd like to give the floor to Professor Dr. Mehmet Ocakçı. The floor is yours, sir. Cemil Bey, thank you very much. I'd like to start my words with thank you, actually. I'd like to thank Marmara Union of Municipalities, the General Secretariat, the Private Secretariat, and also the experts who are working in the Marmara Union of Municipalities. I'd like to thank the participants and audience who are listening to us right now. As you rightly pointed out, Istanbul Technical University and Technology Office and Marmara Union of Municipalities, within a certain agreement, we conducted this project. And in this project, first and foremost, this is the project team. I'd like to introduce them. In the project management, Professor Dr. Fatih Terzi and Gülden Erkut will be there, and the assistants Burak Beyli, Başak Uras, Burcu Alicikoğlu, Burcu Yanar, and Beliz Çakır. We'd like to thank them, and I'd like to they're the advisor professors, Professor Dr. Ahmet Ali Koç from Akdeniz University. And from Department of Economics, Professor Dr. Alpay Filiz Tekin from Sabancı University, Department of Economics, Professor Ayşegül Tanık, Istanbul Technical University, Department of the Environmental Engineering, Professor Dr. Azime Tezer from Urban and Regional Planning Department, Professor Dilay Çelebi from the Faculty of Business Administrators and Administration, Professor Dr. Lütfi Şen, in terms of Eurasia, scientists and institute, and Professor Dr. Remzi Güzel from İTÜ Technical Department of Geological Engineering, Professor Dr. Üner Çetin from Energy Institute İTÜ, Assistant Professor Onur Tezcan from the Department of Construction Engineering, and then is Professor Dr. Ayşenur Albayrak from CHOMU, from the Department of Urban and Regional Planning, the academician Dr. Dilce Günül from Dumlupınar University from the Department of Architecture, and Dr. Oya Kent from the other university. And as you know, today we have more interactive and rapidly responding and innovative approaches in order to decrease the socio-economic structures, and also to have an innovative production structure with a high added value, and also action-focused, flexible, and participatory strategic documents are needed. Marmara Region Spatial Development Strategic Framework document was prepared for this end, and the objective was that under the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals to have a roadmap to solve the problems and potentials, and also have the prospective foresights, and also address the prospective spatial development strategies, and to contribute to the development of the country in cooperation with the local administrations. And this is an important basis for discussing the strategy documents in the regional level. As you can see in the map, this is within the scope of level 2 regions. For example, you can see this is actually outside the boundaries of Marmara, and in TR41 there is Eskişehir, and TR42 Düzce and Bolu were added, and there are 12 provinces, and 6 of them are metropolitan municipalities. And at the same time, and the basin plans are there, and Meriç, Ergene, Marmara, Western Black Sea, Sakarya, Susurluk, and Northern Aegean basins were also evaluated within the scope of this project. I'll give you information about the process. Since the June 2020, we started in 9th of February, and this is a participatory approach was taken since the beginning of the project. There are 2 important field studies between 21st of July, 23rd of August 2020. The first one, the second field study was between the 5th of October and 21st of October 2020, and these were remote studies, but it was remote because of the pandemic. But the first plan was to have them in face-to-face. Then look at the stages of this plan. It's about the current situation analysis and making analytical evaluations, and also vision and getting the vision, and also the current projects from the related actors, and also have the strategic axis and also objectives, and also having the scheme of the spatial development plan, and also having the priority projects. And this is a strategic plan. This is the strategic planning approach was taken in this study, and one of the participatory approach was also the basis of this, and there is the vision, and of course there are the strategic axis, and with the projects to have it to the spaces and to spatial areas, and there is this mechanism which made it possible. So this approach is a basic approach, and there are, of course, there were some groups there, and population and districts system, economy and private spatial specialization regions, transportation, logistics, energy, infrastructure, natural structure, and climate change. Of course, this is in this plan, there is the current situation analysis, and was made, and this study was conducted from by this group, and the findings were focused on the region, and they are consolidated in this way. And there are the policy documents, sectoral policy documents, the environmental settlement plans and basin protection plans were taken into account. And the secondary data from the institutions were taken, and also relational evaluations were made by the specialists of the project. In the first participatory meeting, the objective was to understand the problems and the potentials. So there were participants from the municipalities, governor's house, district governor's house, and the provincial private administrations, and their critical problems and the priority projects were taken, and from the chambers of profession, and also from the NGOs, the potentials were taken. There were 14 governor's house, 7 provincial special administration, 132 district governors, and 169 provinces were taken. And the second participatory meeting, this time it was conducted as workshops, and it was a remote face-to-face, if I might say so. It was an online meeting. There was a series of online meetings, and in the second part, the vision was taken into account, the concepts were taken, and at the same time, the projects and what the projects were also taken into account with what the projects were defined. And it was a remote meeting, and there were some written documents. There were 717 projects were gathered together, and in the first primary data source was the first and second field study, and the secondary data resources were the regional plans and the environmental settlement plans, plan notes, Play Marmara report, and also the projects. And there was a portfolio of projects. What is the subject of the project? What is the benefit expected? Name and an explanation of the project, the implementation area, project current situation, and the budgets. And they were then taken into account in a spatial understanding and approach. Of course, the United Nations development goals, habitat documents, 11th development plan, and the regional development national plan, Turkey Spatial strategic document, logistic master plan, strategic plans in the level of ministries, and in the regional level, the strategy, the approaches with the development agencies, with the Union of Marmara municipalities, and the development agencies. So, of course, there were regrouping, and then the analysis was conducted. And finally, a vision was a vision with a participatory approach, strategic access, and the goal objectives were also taken into a consensus. So when we look at the space, I'd like to provide with brief information. The area, the Marmara region, and with Düzce, Bolu, and Eskişehir, the share of total added value is 47%. And the highest share was from the services sector, and the share of the industry in the added value is 35%, and the share of the agricultural sector is 2%. And when we look at the employment in Tier 1, in industry in Tier 1, in Tier 10 services, and Tier 22 mining and agriculture was on the upfront, and we see that the added value is 83% of the added value is taken by Istanbul, Bursa, and Kocaeli, and we can say that the lowest share was from the Western Marmara, and Bursa, Balıkesir, and Çanakkale were providing the services in agriculture and mining. And when we look at the population, population is concentrated in Istanbul, Kocaeli, Yalova, Bursa, and Sakarya. When we look at the magnitude of the settlements, urban settlements, we see Istanbul, Bursa, and Kocaeli. Therefore, in such provinces, the natural area loss was highest in Istanbul, Kocaeli, and Yalova. And when we look at the region is covering 12.4% of the area, and we can say that 1/3 of the population of Turkey and 1/5 of magnitude and the size of the area is here in this region. And TR 42 in TR 43 the population increase is the highest, and it is lowest in Çanakkale and Balıkesir. TR 22 in industry. When we see from the industries in ISO 500, Istanbul, Kocaeli, and Bursa, and there are 313 organized industrial zone, and 1/3 of these was in this region. The organized industrial zones are in this region. These are the population concentration areas. These are where the investments are very dense. In terms of natural structure, in terms of the earthquake risk, this is a very critical region. This region and these facilities, of course, against this risk, what kind of solutions to be found and how they will act is an important question, and there is a very valuable potential here, and this have to be evaluated together. Now, Gülden Hanım, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you, distinguished colleagues. I would like to say hello to all of you. Under the conditions of the pandemics, we know each other well, but I would like to thank the Marmara region of municipalities. In the research phase, we did not use the traditional approaches, but during the analysis and the research, we did thematic and relational concepts. One of them is innovation and competition. And lütfen seninkini kapar mısın? And then in our area is 70% of our export, our area, and innovation, patents, trademarks, R&D, number of people working at. This study, we have specially established analysis. They also proved our observation that Istanbul, as number 8, is the first, 7 is Ankara, but 6 is Bursa and Kocaeli, are very important in our region. After the Istanbul, they are the most innovative. Bursa and Kocaeli are the most innovative following Istanbul. So these are an innovation ecosystem, and together they have a collaboration, and if they do a collaboration, then they can provide more potential to their environment. 3 of them are industrial cities, and also human resources, innovation, and when we look at the human resources, also publications and population, when we look through the markers, we see that Istanbul predominates, but at the same time, Istanbul has a very important income inequality, and TR 41 and TR 42 are the lowest. Bursa, Eskişehir, Bilecik, and TR 42, Kocaeli's metropolitan municipality. When we look at the human resources and human investment, when we look at university graduates, the most immigration is to Balıkesir, and those that leave are the Eskişehir because of Eskişehir Anadolu University. And when we look at their living standards and the attraction, of course, there is migration. And the university student attracting cities are Istanbul and Eskişehir. Migration, human resources, and attractiveness relationship. We looked at the Istanbul and Eskişehir universities are innovative and followed by Kocaeli, Bursa, Çanakkale, and Balıkesir. In the Marmara region, when we look there, out of 185, we had seven in the region. Of the 185, out of 50, the first 24 are in this region. So innovation and attraction of human resources is very important. In 2018 and 2019, the most immigration are Tekirdağ, Yalova, Eskişehir, and Çanakkale. International immigration coming Istanbul and Bursa are the most people immigrated from and to. For Syrian refugees, 22%, whereas in Istanbul, only in Istanbul, Syrian refugees rate is 14%. When we look at this framework, in the reports, will be reflected that immigration and immigration history of the region, previous and contemporary data are evaluated together. Education and immigration and innovation relationships, we made specific and unique analysis. You will see when we publish our study. I would like to say hello to everyone, and I would like to thank Marmara Municipality Region MARUF for. I would like to go on with the thematic relationships. We see that logistics infrastructure about highways, railways, piers, free zones, and organized industrial regions. We have seen the geographical distribution of. Here we see that these have focused on certain places in the Marmara region. We see this accumulation east to west and north to east. It's in between the interaction of the transportation and especially the roads intersection, and there are 8 airports, both regional, national, and international. So passenger transport is also important, and also in the ports, Kocaeli, Istanbul, and Tekirdağ are important in answering to the load of the region. But all these distribution of this accumulation and its distribution in the region, there is a very important difference in between the north and south of the Marmara region. Tekirdağ-Kocaeli axis is very important axis. These logistics and transport cities have the common feature of opening up to the Marmara Sea. So Marmara sea transportation is very important, and Marmara Sea has a critical role in this. Transportation, logistics, and its relationship with the energy infrastructure and production. As we see here, the design, the spatial design is also supported here, that in certain regions, Istanbul, Kocaeli, Bursa, there is a production predominates. And as a production factor, we're talking about the consumption of electrical energy, and also Istanbul industrial chambers, first 500 members. And of course, the industrial electric, Istanbul, Bursa, Kocaeli, and Tekirdağ predominate. We see that around the Marmara Sea, there is an accumulation and density increase. But we also see that Edirne, Kırklareli, Bolu, and Düzce, the production is less, we can observe. There is also another potential other than the production. Tourism potential is very important, and it has a relationship with the transport and the logistic infrastructure. We can also measure number of beds and number of tourists. We also made another special distribution map. When we look at the symbols of red and orange, we see the bed numbers, and also certain cities are Istanbul, Bursa, Balıkesir, Çanakkale predominate. But when we look at the margins, also they have a balanced distribution of bed numbers, we see. Of course, when we talk about economic development and economic growth, both economically and social and human attraction of cities, we have many of in the Marmara region. Of course, it goes parallel with some negative consequences. And when we understand this, to evaluate, we need to know about the natural resources. When we looked at the water per person, Marmara region is poor in water supply. We can see it very clearly. Here we see Düzce and Çanakkale are a bit better than the rest, but still they have water shortages. So water resources, the region is under high risk according to the water resources. Also, when we go on with the structure, natural resources are very good in the region, but the climate change, and we see that these green are critical prevention fields, areas, and we see that settlements are right in these green zones, and also touristic activities are together, hand in hand. What is problem is when we look at the human resources, dangerous waste is also important in Istanbul, Kocaeli, Bursa, Tekirdağ, and Çanakkale cities. Middle, high, and very high ecosystem service capacity tourism development area. when we look at the industrial and settlement, we see that it's more. So these very tourism development areas are much more of a percentage as compared to the rest. And the resulting take-home message is, like industrial and service sector, where there is a growth trend of tendency to growth, we must do the same for tourism attraction areas that are natural resources. And the tourism demand shall be also sustainable and manageable. And it's a necessity, we understand this. When we look at the current status analysis, we have made some schematic analysis, and we approached natural and cultural foci, Ramsar areas, national forests, national parks, national protected areas, UNESCO heritage list, and transient heritage list, cultural. In the Marmara region, there are several foci like Çanakkale, Kaz Dağı, Manyas, Kuş Gölü, Ulubat, Uludağ Mountain, Bolu, Yedi Göller, Longoz Forest, and Bosphorus are cultural foci that are very important. And they show cultural foci. And also transportation in between them is also very important, and it can be developed. Similar approach can be taken to production and innovation foci. I would like to leave the word to Gülden Hocam, please. As Fatih just said, in our study analysis, we made relational and thematic, and we have also some foci, natural and cultural richness, and also production and innovation foci. And these are the leading regions. We see that the settlement areas are dense, as we see Istanbul as a darker color. We see Istanbul, Kocaeli, Bursa, one after the other. These three cities at the same time are also foci of production and innovation. Istanbul is on first degree. Bursa and Kocaeli are second degree innovation foci. Eskişehir, Tekirdağ, and Sakarya are third degree production and innovation foci. Bursa also has an agricultural focus. Bursa predominates. Also Çanakkale, Balıkesir follow on the Marmara, south of Marmara as agricultural centers, and on the north, Edirne and Kırklareli are important for agricultural production foci. Human resources and attractiveness foci, as we have said in the previous analysis, Istanbul is the first degree focus. We see Istanbul and Eskişehir as the first coming, and second degree are Kocaeli, Çanakkale, and Balıkesir and Bursa. Here, as we have said before, the cities have high percentage of university graduates attraction, and when we look into this, with contemporary data analysis, university students and the future potential human resources. So these will be attracting these people. When we go back to transport and logistic foci, infrastructure are used in this schematic presentation. We see the Bosphorus and the Çanakkale and Trans-European Mainway, Izmir Highway. The network in between the roads are important. And here, these transport networks in a while will also determine the development and growth axis. These foci in transmission zones are important, especially on the area and field. We see the tones of green as grids, settlement density as low, middle, and high settlement. In between, the dots in between, the purple are industrial dense, red are settlement dense and population dense. So when we look at these densities of industrial and settlement, in between industrial and settlement, the transport axis, there are some transmission zones. Of course, it's because of the effect of the natural structures, but also industrial buildings and tourism as they develop and grow. It will affect these transmission zones. And natural plateaus are important as transmission zones, and we have to be careful for these sensitive zones like Ergene Plateau and Bursa, Eskişehir, Bilecik, Sakarya are all transmission zones here. And we see that in the north ecological corridors, south of the Marmara Sea, ecological corridors are the limiting borders. If we come at the axis and their connection and the corridors, we see that the industry, Tekirdağ and Bolu, has an axis of industrial development, and we showed it as a dark purple line. This is the first axis. From Kocaeli, Yalova, Bursa, we see the development down to Balıkesir, Susurluk, and this is a second industrial development axis. These are, in a way, are with the highway and road network. We see that on Bilecik, Eskişehir, there is a decentralization of the industry. There are secondary axes of development. Also, nature and sea tourism corridor is also a development axis from Istanbul to Tekirdağ coastal area, from Çanakkale to Izmir coastal area. We see this axis as the tourism development axis. From Çanakkale to Yalova, north of Bursa, we have an olive development axis, which is important and related to agriculture and is critical. There is also the Silkway tourism corridor. that we haven't seen, but it's a potential. So we have to be careful. We from Sakarya to Ankara. So it's important.
With these, you can see the spatial areas, and this is one of the most important outputs of this project. We see the focuses and the corridors and the transmission, the transit areas. So you can monitor all of these. They have all they were evaluated in their own analytical framework. So here we can see the situation in which they're all together. The region was analyzed with all the dimensions, all the potentials were put into upfront, and with the meetings, the vision was then discussed, and then there was such a consensus, a strong local cooperation and networks. Marmara, which prioritizes the production, productivity and production, innovation, global competition, nature with natural and cultural assets, sustainable, resilient, and inclusive settlements having Marmara. So there are 5 strategic axes. And under these axes, there were 31 objectives and 71 projects were defined. But we have to say that these projects are short-term projects. And of course, I'd like to highlight once again that there are some short-term and medium and long-term projects. There are 71 projects which were short-term projects. And Gülden Hanım, please. There are 5 strategic axes. One of them is the local, strong local cooperation and networks. And based on these, we defined the objectives and defined them with the projects, and within this axis, which objective serves for which SDG, UN SDG, which SDG addresses. We looked at this in the inauguration speech. There were United Nations and other international organizations and representatives were they addressed the SDGs. There are 9 years to 2030. 1 year ago, we can say that in the last decade, and we are in the last 9 years in COVID conditions. We started the project in this way. There are 71 projects. And in the second axis, productivity and production, innovation, and the global competition. I will give details of this later. The third one is the natural and cultural assets. This is the fourth one is sustainable and resilient communities. And the last but not the least was the social development and inclusiveness, which attracts the human capital, and there is a development of this. And there is such a situation, so we can say that there is the management of the internal and external migration. This is how we defined them. In the last slide, you will see these axes. In we made a relationship with the 11th development plan, and of course we tried to establish a relation with the UN SDG. So as a result, the projects which will attain our objectives will be between 3 to 5 years. But when we look at the next slide, this is the relationship with the 11th SDG. And we see 11/2 until 2030, especially vulnerable women, children, and disabled and elderly people needs will be given importance. The road safety will be developed, and with the public transportation development, ensuring safe, appropriate priced, accessible, and sustainable transportation systems. So there are 5 projects in this regard. And also, of course, establishing the logistic network and culture routes will be developed. And there are the 4th axis, sustainable and resilient settlements, and the 5th one is the social development and inclusiveness. So we are trying to define the priority projects. The first one is the transportation and logistics. When we look at 1.3 objective, development of culture routes and tourism network, our region as a result is a short season project. There should be alternative ways is offered. An alternative culture tourism routes to be established as a project. Next slide. While we were defining these projects and objectives, we defined the problems and what we objected at and what kind of projects are there. When we look at 1.3, culture development of culture routes and tourism network, what are the problems? And of course, there are shortcomings in international transportation network in tourism, and there is a lack of studies and activities in the international platform in terms of tourism destination promotion and branding, and lack of qualified tourism areas, and also the short season of sea tourism and sunbathing. And in the following slides about the second accent, which is the productivity in production, innovation, and global competition. When we look at 2.4, I will not read them all. We have a limited time, and our reports are very in reports there are project fish and detailed information regarding the projects. I'm trying to explain the approach within this limited time, and for supporting the rural development, and with it, there is the project of organizing agricultural and rural development congress, the social entrepreneurship certificate projects and cooperative markets projects, shops projects, the cities, the peripheries of the cities, and the urban and rural development. And of course there was tendency to live outside urban areas, and from local, of course, the production is important, and the rural development is one of the projects that we see, and it's a short-term project. And here, when we look at objective 2.4, what were the problems? When we look at the problems, these are as follows. pressure of industrialization and urbanization on the agricultural areas. The misleading decisions were taken in the planning for the misleading land use, and there's a risk of local diversities. There are lacking points in the marketing of agricultural products. There are in terms of food safety and with the good agriculture and organic agriculture, the lack of awareness in the farmers and loss of employment in because of the migration from urban rural to urban, and also the shortcomings in access to social culture service provision, and the low rate of productivity in agriculture, and the other actions will be explained by Fatih Bey. The social development and inclusiveness. When we look at 5.2 objective, it is raising the training and raising the qualified labor force. For the human capital development, the qualified training of raising of the qualified labor force and decreasing social inequalities. And it is, of course, that this is an important objective, and also management of the internal and external migration, a lack of qualified labor force, and loss of qualified labor force, and in terms of people's employment in terms of their qualifications. And when we look at objective 5.2, the qualified labor force are migrating to Istanbul, Ankara, and Bursa, the large provinces. We saw this in the planning. And then the Bursa with a high diversity. It is a medium size, and with scale impact, people prefer Istanbul, and being exposed to the pressure of migration in the national and international scale, and the unqualified labor force coming with the migration. The qualified ones come, but we need to have some projects in the qualified labor force, and the not having good analysis of the needs analysis for the entrepreneurs trainer. And when we look at the management of internal and external migration, there are the region, both there's in-migration and out migration from this region, and we made the detailed analysis province by province, and the time sets you can see the data in the report. And the urbanization speed and population density is above the country average. Social disharmony and the decrease in life quality because of the in-migration. What kind of projects we can have in this regard? We had a project set, and of course in the implementation they will be evaluated once again, and of course who's going to do that and who will do that and what kind of activities will be conducted are the subjects that needs to be re-evaluated. We have a very limited period of time. I'll touch upon the general subjects. The third one is the natural and cultural assets. There are 4 objectives. It is protection and repair of ecosystem, development of environmental infrastructure, protection of cultural heritage and reviving of this, and also dissemination of the renewable energy resources use. And the short-term ones can be seen in the black letters, and there are the ones with a gray background. These are the supportive projects, And of course, these projects can support many objectives. They are designed in such projects, and with the multiplier effect, it is a system that we can understand the projects. And in the strategic axis, there are you can see the fundamental problems. And in the next slide, strategic axis for sustainable and resilient settlements. We have 4 objectives. I'll look at, I'll tell you a few finding about objective 4.4, decreasing the effect of climate, negative effects of climate change, and also evaluation of the fire outbreak potential. And also the calculation of the population projections and prospective migration movements. These are the events that we experienced, as we can see in the projects.
The next slide is about these basic problems we see related to this target. We go on with 71 projects are like IDs. Their IDs here. We see that what is the aim of these projects, why are these done, and what sort of problems are, what is the importance value, and these are all 71 short-term projects, and also which institution is responsible for these projects. We made such a 71 project, one by one are progressing, and from the big vision down to each project systematically we have recommended these. We would like to thank you, Cemil Bey. The floor is yours. Thank you, Professor. Thank you so much. You have also kept the time and a wonderful summary. And Gülden hocamız also, she was ill and coughing. She still contributed. And there are many questions from our colleagues. We would like to apologize from our guests. We have 10 parallel rooms, but I think this is the first regional project and study with your distinguished contribution, and also development agents are associated with MARUF. We added 3 more provinces. Eskişehir is added to it, Bolu, and all sustainable development aims, all the province, environmental, and 5 development agencies. They are all related, and it's such a strategic framework, and this shows how much of your effort and how precious your efforts are in this field. And I would like, before I close, I would like to say that this is not mandatory. We don't have a planning, any municipality. We don't force anyone. This is just the direction. Risks, regions, potentials, problems, its needs, and its global sustainability, and this is such a framework. Thank you very much, all 3 professors. This will be disclosed in the coming days, so we will come back to you as we apply what you are proposing. We also thank you very much. Respectfully yours, Fatih Hoca, Gülden Hoca, Mehmet, we all thank you, thank you, thank you. Goodbye, goodbye, goodbye.